Hi, I'm Leigh Older, and this is Winealittlemore. As you can see, I've got a very large wine bottle next to me here, which originally had the equivalent of 20 of these inside of it. And it's a neat conversation piece and certainly fun to display. But this is called the Nebuchadnezzar. That's the size of this bottle. And there are different names for different sizes. There's actually larger ones than this, if you can believe that. But the purpose of my video today was to talk briefly about champagne versus sparkling wine and why it's important to the French to call champagne champagne and sparkling wine. And I'll explain the difference. Before I get to that, just a little bit of history of Veuve Clicquot. This winery started in the late 1700s in France, of course, and Madame Clicquot ended up running the winery. She was a widow after something happened to her husband, and she ended up being very early as a female winery owner in a time when there were a lot of men running wineries in France. So she had a lot to deal with as a businesswoman, but she also was inventive. She actually invented the process of riddling, which is how even today champagne is handled during the process that it's on the shelf at the winery, and it's being moved around and rotated and so forth. So if you want to learn more about riddling, definitely look it up on Wiki, and Madame Clicquot is the one who sort of came up with that. So I just thought I'd point that out. But back to sparkling wine and champagne. So in the case of any sparkling wine that comes from the region of Champagne in France, it is proper to be called champagne. And the reason is that the French tie their wine naming to where it's from. So another example of this could be, you would have a red wine that's from Bordeaux, and it can be called a Bordeaux because that is the place that it comes from in France. But if someone were to call a red table wine over here that's made in America, for example, a Bordeaux wine, that would not be appropriate. They could call it a Bordeaux style wine, which in the French way means that it has certain varietals in it, certain characteristics and so forth and so on. But in the case of sparkling, there's places all over the world that make sparkling wine, and even different types of varietals and so forth. But in the case of those, they need to be called a sparkling wine from wherever it's from. So in the case of France, any of those that come from there are going to, again, be called champagne, but they're not going to want, a cava. It can be called a cava, similarly, because it's from that area. But if it's from, say, Napa or some other region, it's going to need to be called sparkling from wherever it's from. So anyway, that's a little bit about that, and there's actually quite a lot more story and background with all of this stuff, and the traditions and the people and the places. But this is just sort of a primer into that if you're not familiar. And I appreciate you checking out this show today. If you want to watch more, facebook.com/winealittlemore. Also check out the YouTube channel, Winealittlemore, and thanks for joining me today. Take care.